Hi, my name's Dave Brons. I write instrumental guitar music with a Celtic symphonic twist. For my new album, I decided rather than spend £3,000 on a hot-rodded Marshall Plexi, I'd make my own. These videos are a diary of that process. Okay, so we've drilled the holes for the controls, and I've mounted all the front control panel controls, switches, and also the back jack sockets, speaker sockets, and switches as well. But right now we're going to be wiring up the controls here, and it's a pretty tricky, fiddly job. And usually what I do is I put the controls on the outside and then solder them in that way, and then unscrew them, put them on this side because it's a bit easier because you don't have the chassis in the way. But this layout is so complex compared to what amps I've built in the past. I'm just gonna do it in situ. So one thing you have to be aware of when you're soldering, particularly the little switches, is that you don't heat them too much, or else they'll melt on the inside and the switch will fail. But apart from that, it's just a case of getting stuck in, I'm afraid. So here we go, I'll heads down, I'll see you at the end. When you're wiring switches like this, you've got to be really careful you don't melt the plastic switch or the components inside it. So if you have an adjustable soldering iron, then I'd turn down the heat on it and just place the wires all ready inserted so that you can quickly solder them without causing any damage. The other thing is that I find wiring tone controls and volume controls really confusing on amplifiers. I don't know why, but it's worth triple checking the schematic with this, because it's really tricky to troubleshoot why the amp's not working later on if you made a mistake on the tone controls. Right, that pretty much completes the wiring of the tone stack. I've just got one more control to wire and that is done. Okay, what I'm going to do now is wire the input jack, and the input jack is a shielded piece, needs wiring with a shielded piece of cable, a bit like a miniature guitar lead. So we're just going to tin the shielding. It's a clever little jack that basically shorts out when you don't have a guitar plugged in it, so that you don't get any noise. We do that. So you've got the 1 meg resistor shielding to the top there, and then when the jack's pulled out, basically the tip of the positive will connect to the ground and then short out and stop any hum. Okay, now we're going to look at how to do the input wire, this braided shielded wire, which is the first connection to the input at valve 1. So we're just going to gently remove the outer shielding, and it's important not to cut too much off because you don't want to take out the braided wire on the inside. So now you reveal like a little bit of the braided wire inside. Just going to twist that and put it around the edge. And at the input jack side, we've connected the braided wire. At this side, we're not going to connect it because we don't want to create any ground loops. Just going to try and take the wire off the end. There we go. So we have, as you can see there, braided, and you've just got the a little bit of the center, the core wire exposed there. So I'm just going to put a bit of solder on that. And the next thing I'm going to do is use some what's called heat shrink wire. So I'm just going to chop a little bit off. And this is basically plastic tubing that goes around the outside. And when you heat it, it shrinks to about half its diameter. So I'm just going to grab my soldering iron, not use the tip, but just use the edge, and it shrinks down, it'll grip the wire, enclose that braided bit of wire, and it's a great way of like joining two cables together. If this, you know, if you've got two cables and you want to join them together but you don't want them to be exposed, so you can make one tie the cable out of the two cable ends, and there we have it. And now what I'll do is I'll just connect it straight to the input one on valve 1. So I'm going to start working on the opposite side of the chassis now. So first job is to wire up the input 1 on the first valve, and so I've soldered the 33k resistor to the pin. I'm just gonna, and I've made a little loop on the end of the resistor wire. I'm just going to solder the wire in. The idea of the resistor on pin 1 is just to stop sort of radio interference and block out stuff like that. So solder on. So we've wired up valve 1, at least attached wires to the sockets, and now I'm going to be moving along just these switches along the back here to wire all the various kind of little mod switches for these for the first 3 valves. Just like with the switches on the front, you've got to be careful not to overheat these switches. All these switches are doing are changing the tone a little bit, and there's also like a diode clipping circuit, which is like basically like a distortion pedal wired into the amp, just to make it sound a bit more modern if that's what you're going for. Right, okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to wire in the speaker sockets, the power input and the fuse, which should complete the wiring on this side. Okay, that's all the controls and switches wired up. Guys, I hope you found the tips for soldering cables useful. You can use the information for wiring the input jack from this video to fix guitar cables. It's the same technique you use for wiring up the socket inside your guitar if that ever breaks. So yeah, so I hope you're finding, you know, learning stuff through these videos. That's the whole idea of doing them. If you have a minute, please go and check out my music either on Bandcamp, just Google Dave Brons. Subscribe to this channel right now, and yeah, check out my music. I'd be over the moon. Thanks guys.